My fiance traveled to Chicago twice a month for important client meetings. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive to be marrying such a successful businessman. Then I found a receipt for an engagement ring in his jacket pocket purchased the same week he proposed to me. That's when I realized he wasn't having business meetings. He was planning another wedding. Some men cheat with random hookups or one-night stands. Others have emotional affairs or long-distance relationships, but my fiancé took infidelity to a level I didn't know was possible. He didn't just have another woman, he had another life, complete with a second engagement, wedding plans, and a future that didn't include me. My name is Sophie Martinez, I'm 28, and this is the story of how I discovered that my perfect relationship was actually just one half of my fiancé's double life. I met Daniel Reeves 2 years ago at a networking event for young professionals in Seattle. He was charming, well-dressed, and had the kind of confident presence that made him stand out in any room. He worked in pharmaceutical sales and traveled frequently for work, which he explained was both the blessing and curse of his career. I love what I do, but I hate being away from home so much, he told me during our first conversation. It makes it hard to build meaningful relationships. I was immediately attracted to his honesty about the challenges of his lifestyle. As someone who valued stability and consistency, I appreciated that Daniel was upfront about the demands of his career. Our first few dates were perfect. Daniel was attentive, thoughtful, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. He asked about my work as a social media manager, my family, and my dreams for the future. "I've been waiting to meet someone like you," he told me after our third date. "Someone who understands that my travel schedule doesn't mean I'm not serious about building a relationship." We became exclusive after 2 months of dating, and Daniel made it clear that he was looking for a long-term commitment despite his demanding career. "My travel schedule is actually going to work in our favor," he explained. "When I'm in town, I can focus completely on you. And when I'm traveling, you can focus on your own projects and interests." This arrangement did work well for us initially. Daniel traveled to Chicago about twice a month for what he described as important client meetings and training sessions with his pharmaceutical company's regional office. "Chicago is one of our biggest markets," he would explain. "I need to maintain those relationships personally, not just through phone calls and emails." When Daniel was in Seattle, he was completely present in our relationship. We had romantic dinner dates, spent weekends exploring the city, and began talking seriously about our future together. "I want to build a life with you, Sophie," he told me during one of our weekend getaways. "I know my travel complicates things, but I think we can make it work." I fell in love with Daniel's vision of our future and his commitment to making our relationship a priority despite his professional demands. After 8 months of dating, Daniel proposed to me during a romantic weekend in San Juan Islands. He had planned every detail perfectly, from the waterfront restaurant to the sunset timing. "Sophie Martinez, you've made me believe in love again," he said as he got down on one knee. "Will you marry me and let me spend the rest of my life making you happy?" The engagement ring was beautiful, a classic solitaire diamond in a vintage-inspired setting. It was exactly what I would have chosen for myself, which made the proposal feel even more perfect. "How did you know exactly what style I wanted?" I asked as I admired the ring. "I pay attention to the things that matter to you," Daniel replied. "I wanted this ring to be something you'd love wearing for the rest of your life." We set our wedding date for the following October, giving us 14 months to plan the ceremony and prepare for married life. Daniel continued his regular travel schedule to Chicago throughout our engagement period, but he made sure to involve me in wedding planning decisions even when he was out of town. "I know I'm not physically here to look at venues and taste cakes," he would say during our nightly phone calls from Chicago, "but this is our wedding, and I want to be involved in every decision." Daniel's attentiveness during his business trips actually impressed me. He would call every evening to discuss our wedding plans, ask about my day, and share details about his meetings and client dinners. "How are the Chicago meetings going?" I would ask. "Really well. We're launching a new product line next quarter, so there's a lot of coordination work to be done with the regional team. Are you staying at the same hotel as usual?" "Yeah, the Marriott downtown. It's convenient for getting to the office and client meetings." These conversations reassured me that Daniel was thinking about our relationship even when work demands kept him busy in another city. 6 months into our engagement, I decided to surprise Daniel with a romantic gesture during one of his Chicago trips. I had been working extra hours to finish a big project early, and I thought it would be fun to fly to Chicago for the weekend and surprise him at his hotel. I booked a flight for Friday evening and planned to show up at the Marriott downtown where Daniel always stayed during his business trips. This is going to be such a sweet surprise, I told my best friend Maria when I shared my plan. Daniel works so hard during these trips, and I want to show him how much I appreciate his dedication. That's really romantic, Maria agreed. He'll love that you made the effort to come see him. I packed a weekend bag with Daniel's favorite lingerie and made dinner reservations at a nice restaurant I had researched online. Friday evening, I caught a flight to Chicago and took a taxi directly to the Marriott downtown. I was excited and nervous about surprising Daniel, hoping that he wouldn't be too tired from work to enjoy a spontaneous romantic weekend. At the hotel front desk, I asked for Daniel Reeves's room number. "I'm sorry, but we don't have anyone registered under that name," the desk clerk told me after checking her computer. "Could you check again? He should be staying here through Sunday. He's with Meridian Pharmaceuticals." The clerk checked again and confirmed that there was no Daniel Reeves registered at the hotel. I was confused, but not immediately concerned. Maybe Daniel had changed hotels for some reason, or maybe his company had booked him under a different name for corporate rates. I called Daniel's cell phone to find out where he was staying. "Sophie?" Daniel answered, sounding surprised. "Is everything okay? You usually don't call when I'm in meetings." "I'm actually in Chicago," I said. "I wanted to surprise you for the weekend." There was a long pause before Daniel responded. "You're in Chicago? Right now?" "Yes. I'm at the Marriott downtown, but they don't have you registered here. Where are you staying?" "Oh, there was a last-minute change. The company switched us to a different hotel for this trip." "Which hotel?" The Hyatt, near the airport." "That's far from downtown. Why would they put you so far from your meetings?" "I don't know. Corporate booking decisions don't always make sense." Daniel's explanation felt off, but I didn't want to question him too extensively while he was supposedly in work meetings. "Should I come to the Hyatt?" "Actually, Sophie, this isn't a good weekend for a surprise visit. We have client dinners both nights, and I'll be working until late. You just end up sitting alone in the hotel room." "I don't mind. I brought a book, and I can explore the city during the day while you're working." "I really think you should go back to Seattle. I'll make it up to you next weekend when I'm home." Daniel's reluctance to see me was hurtful and confusing. I had flown to another city to surprise my fiancé, and he was essentially telling me to leave. "Daniel, are you upset that I came?" "I'm not upset. I just think the timing isn't good for a visit. When would be a good time for me to visit you on a business trip?" "We'll talk about it when I get home. I really need to get back to my meeting now." Daniel hung up, leaving me standing in the lobby of a Chicago hotel, feeling rejected and confused about why my romantic surprise had been so unwelcome. I decided to fly back to Seattle that evening, rather than spend the weekend alone in a city where my fiancé didn't want to see me. When Daniel returned from his trip, he apologized for his reaction and explained that work stress had made him handle the situation poorly. "I was in the middle of difficult negotiations when you called," he said. "I should have been more welcoming, but I was worried that having you there would distract me from closing an important deal. I understand work stress, but I flew to another city to see you. Your reaction made me feel like I was bothering you." "You weren't bothering me. I was just surprised and worried about balancing work responsibilities with spending time with you. In the future, would you rather I not visit during business trips? Let's plan visits in advance so I can make sure my schedule accommodates romantic time together." Daniel's explanation made sense, and I appreciated that he acknowledged handling the situation poorly. I decided to let go of my hurt feelings and focus on better communication about future travel plans. But the incident had planted a seed of doubt about Daniel's business trips and his availability during them. Over the next few months, I began paying more attention to Daniel's travel patterns and communication during his Chicago trips. I noticed that he was often unavailable during evening hours, when he claimed to be at client dinners, but he would call me very late at night or early in the morning. "Sorry I missed your call," he would say. "The client dinner ran really late, and then I had to prepare for morning meetings." "What kind of client dinners run until midnight?" "You'd be surprised. These pharmaceutical guys like to party." I also noticed that Daniel's stories about his work in Chicago were often vague and inconsistent. "How was your presentation to the regional team?" I would ask. "It went well. They're excited about the new product launch." "What kind of feedback did they give you?" "Just general positive feedback. Nothing specific worth repeating." Daniel's reluctance to share details about his work made me wonder if he was hiding something about his Chicago activities. The revelation that changed everything came 6 weeks before our wedding. I was doing laundry and found a receipt in Daniel's jacket pocket from his most recent Chicago trip. I usually didn't go through his pockets, but the receipt had fallen out, and I noticed it was from a jewelry store. My first thought was that Daniel had bought me a wedding gift, which was sweet but unnecessary since we had already exchanged engagement presents. But when I looked at the receipt more closely, I realized it was for an engagement ring. A4500 engagement ring purchased on the same date Daniel had proposed to me 8 months earlier. I stared at the receipt in confusion. Daniel had proposed to me with a beautiful ring that I assumed had cost around $500. So maybe this was just the receipt for my ring that he had forgotten to remove from his jacket. But the receipt was dated from his most recent Chicago trip, not from 8 months ago when he had actually proposed to me. Why would Daniel have a receipt for an engagement ring purchased last week? I took a photo of the receipt and spent the rest of the day trying to think of innocent explanations for why my fiancé would have recently purchased an engagement ring. Maybe he was helping a friend shop for rings. Maybe he was returning or exchanging something. Maybe he had bought a backup ring in case something happened to mine. But all of these explanations seemed unlikely and overly complicated. That evening, I decided to ask Daniel about the receipt directly. "Daniel, I found this in your jacket pocket," I said, showing him the receipt. "I was doing laundry and it fell out." Daniel looked at the receipt and his face went pale. "Where did you find this?" "In your jacket pocket, the one you wore to Chicago last week." Daniel stared at the receipt for a long moment, clearly thinking about how to respond. "I was helping my buddy Mike shop for an engagement ring," he said finally. "He asked me to go with him because he doesn't know anything about jewelry." "Mike is getting engaged?" "Yeah, he's been dating this girl for a while and decided it's time to propose." "Why would he need you to buy the ring for him?" "He didn't. I just went with him to provide moral support and help him pick something out." "But this receipt has your name on it." Daniel looked at the receipt again, and I could see him realizing that his story didn't match the evidence. "Mike paid me back," he said. "He gave me cash, and I put it on my credit card because he doesn't have one with a high enough limit." This explanation was possible, but it seemed unnecessarily complicated, and the timing bothered me. "When is Mike planning to propose?" "I'm not sure. Soon, I think." "What's his girlfriend's name?" "Sarah." "You don't know her." Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the engagement ring receipt and Daniel's explanation for it. Something about the story felt wrong, but I couldn't identify exactly what was bothering me about it. I decided to do some research to see if I could verify Daniel's explanation about helping his friend Mike. I looked through Daniel's social media accounts and phone contacts to find information about his friend Mike, who was supposedly getting engaged. I found a Mike Thompson in Daniel's contacts, but when I looked at his social media profiles, there was no evidence of a serious girlfriend or impending engagement. Mike's recent posts were all about being single and going on dates with different women. This didn't necessarily disprove Daniel's story, since not everyone shares their relationship status on social media, but it raised additional questions about the engagement ring receipt. I also noticed something else while reviewing Daniel's recent social media activity. During his Chicago trips, Daniel would occasionally post photos of meals or city views with captions like "working hard in the Windy City" or "another successful client meeting." But when I looked more closely at the locations and timestamps of these posts, I realized that some of them had been taken at restaurants and locations that seemed more appropriate for romantic dates than business meetings. One photo showed an intimate candlelit dinner at an upscale restaurant with a caption about "celebrating a successful week of meetings." Another photo showed a couple's spa package with a caption about "treating myself after a productive business trip." These posts suggested that Daniel's Chicago trips might involve more personal activities than the business meetings he described to me. The final piece of evidence that confirmed my suspicions came when I decided to look more closely at Daniel's travel expenses. Daniel always paid for his own flights and hotels during business trips, claiming that his company reimbursed him later. I had access to our shared credit card statements and decided to review his travel charges from the past year. What I found was shocking. Daniel wasn't just traveling to Chicago twice a month for business. He was also making regular trips to Portland, Oregon that he had never mentioned to me. According to the credit card statements, Daniel had been traveling to Portland almost as frequently as he traveled to Chicago, staying at nice hotels and dining at expensive restaurants. He had never mentioned Portland business trips to me, and I couldn't understand why his pharmaceutical sales job would require regular travel to both Chicago and Portland. More importantly, the Portland trips followed the same pattern as his Chicago trips, 2 or 3 day stays at upscale hotels, with charges for romantic restaurants and couple-oriented activities. I realized that Daniel wasn't just hiding one business trip from me. He was hiding an entire second set of travel activities that had nothing to do with work. That night, I confronted Daniel with the credit card evidence. "Daniel, I need you to explain these charges to me," I said, showing him printouts of his Portland hotel and restaurant expenses. "What charges? You've been traveling to Portland regularly for the past year, but you've never mentioned these trips to me." Daniel looked at the credit card statements and I could see him trying to formulate an explanation. "Those are work trips too," he said. "We have clients in Portland that I need to visit periodically. Why have you never mentioned Portland business trips? I didn't think you'd be interested in the details of every client visit. You tell me about every Chicago trip in detail, but you've never once mentioned traveling to Portland. Portland trips are shorter and less significant. Daniel, some of these Portland hotel stays are 3 days long, and you're eating at restaurants that cost $200 per meal. That doesn't sound like quick client visits. Some clients expect to be entertained at a certain level." Daniel's explanations were becoming increasingly weak and defensive, and I could tell he was lying about something significant. "Daniel, I think you need to tell me the truth about your travel. Something is going on that you're not telling me about." "I am telling you the truth. I travel for work, sometimes to Chicago and sometimes to Portland." "Then why do you have a receipt for an engagement ring purchased in Chicago last week?" "I already explained that. I was helping Mike." "Mike Thompson? The Mike who posts about being single and dating different women every weekend?" Daniel realized that I had been investigating his story, and his expression changed from defensive to panicked. "Sophie, you need to trust me. I'm telling you the truth about everything. I can't trust you when your stories don't match the evidence. I need you to explain what's really going on." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him deciding how much of the truth to reveal. "Okay," he said finally. "There's something I haven't told you about my work situation." "What?" "I'm not actually employed by Meridian Pharmaceuticals anymore. I was laid off 8 months ago." This revelation was shocking, but didn't explain the engagement ring receipt or the pattern of romantic expenses. "You've been unemployed for 8 months? What have you been doing during your business trips?" "I've been freelance consulting for different pharmaceutical companies. That's why I travel to multiple cities." "Freelance consulting that requires you to buy engagement rings?" Daniel realized that his unemployment explanation didn't address the most damning evidence, and I could see him struggling to maintain his lies. "Daniel, I think you're having an affair," I said directly. "I think your business trips are actually romantic getaways with another woman." "That's not true." "Then explain the engagement ring receipt. Explain the romantic restaurant charges. Explain why you're traveling to cities you've never mentioned while staying at expensive hotels." Daniel was silent for several minutes, and I knew he was deciding whether to continue lying or tell me the truth. "Sophie," he said finally, "this is going to be hard to hear. I'm listening. I have been seeing someone else. But it's not what you think." "What is it then?" "I'm engaged to someone in Portland." The words hit me like a physical blow. Daniel wasn't just cheating on me, he was living a completely double life with another fiancée. "You're engaged to someone else?" "Yes." "While you're engaged to me?" "Yes." "For how long?" "About a year." I stared at Daniel in disbelief. He had been engaged to another woman for almost our entire engagement period. "Daniel, what are you saying? You're planning to marry 2 different people?" I was trying to figure out what to do. "I love you both, and I couldn't choose between you. So you decided to lie to both of us and plan 2 weddings?" I thought maybe one of the relationships would end naturally, and I wouldn't have to choose. Daniel, that's insane. You can't marry two people. I know that. I was going to make a decision before either wedding actually happened. The conversation continued for hours as I tried to understand the scope of Daniel's deception. He explained that he had met his Portland fiancée, Amanda, around the same time he met me. He had developed serious relationships with both of us simultaneously, telling each of us that he traveled for work. His Chicago business trips were actually romantic weekends with Amanda in Portland, while his Portland business trips were fictional cover stories for the time he spent with me in Seattle. Daniel had been maintaining 2 complete relationships, including 2 engagement rings, 2 wedding plans, and 2 sets of future promises. What were you planning to do about the weddings? I asked. Our wedding is in 6 weeks, and presumably Amanda has a wedding plan too. Amanda's wedding is planned for next spring. I thought I'd have more time to figure things out. Figure what out? You can't marry both of us. I was hoping that one of you would decide you didn't want to get married, or that something would happen to make the decision for me. Something like what? I don't know. I was just hoping the situation would resolve itself. Daniel's plan was so delusional and selfish that I couldn't comprehend how he thought it could possibly work. Daniel, did you think you could keep this up forever? Did you think neither of us would ever discover the truth? I thought I'd make a decision before it went too far. You proposed to both of us. You've been planning 2 weddings. How much further could it go? Daniel had no good answers for my questions because his behavior had been completely irrational and unsustainable. The next day, I decided I needed to contact Amanda and let her know about Daniel's double life. Through social media research, I found Amanda Walsh, a 29-year-old graphic designer living in Portland. Her social media profiles showed a happy relationship with a man who looked exactly like my fiancé, including recent posts about wedding planning and engagement photos. I sent Amanda a private message explaining who I was and what I had discovered about Daniel's double engagement. Hi, Amanda. I know this will be shocking to hear, but I think we need to talk. I'm engaged to Daniel Reeves, and I recently discovered that he's also engaged to you. I have evidence that he's been lying to both of us about his travel and maintaining 2 separate relationships. Amanda responded within an hour, clearly devastated by the revelation. This can't be true, she wrote back. Daniel travels to Chicago for work, but he's never mentioned being engaged to anyone else. I shared the evidence I had gathered, including photos of Daniel's credit card statements showing his travel to both cities and pictures of the engagement ring receipt. Amanda and I arranged to talk on the phone that evening. Sophie, I'm so sorry this is happening to both of us, Amanda said during our call. I had no idea Daniel was living a double life. How long have you been together? Almost 2 years. He proposed 6 months ago. He told me he was laid off from his pharmaceutical job 8 months ago. What did he tell you about his work? He said he works in pharmaceutical sales and travels to Chicago twice a month for client meetings. We compared notes about Daniel's stories and discovered that he had been telling us mirror versions of the same lies. When he was with me, he claimed to travel to Chicago for work. When he was with Amanda, he claimed to travel to Seattle for work. He's been using each of us as an alibi for spending time with the other, Amanda realized. We also discovered that Daniel had been recycling romantic gestures between us. The restaurant where Daniel had proposed to Amanda was the same restaurant where he had taken me for our 6-month anniversary. The weekend getaway location where he had proposed to me was the same place he had taken Amanda for her birthday. He's been living the same relationship twice with 2 different women, I said. Amanda and I decided to confront Daniel together to demand answers and closure. We arranged to meet at a neutral location in Portland, where Amanda would bring Daniel under the pretense of discussing wedding plans. When Daniel arrived at the coffee shop and saw both Amanda and me sitting together, his face went completely white. Sophie, what are you doing in Portland? I'm here to meet your other fiancé, I said. Daniel sat down at our table, looking like he wanted to disappear. Daniel, Amanda said, we know about everything. We know you've been engaged to both of us and lying about your travel. I can explain. There's no explanation that makes this okay, I interrupted. You've been living a double life and planning to marry both of us. I never meant for this to happen. You proposed to both of us, Amanda said. You've been planning 2 weddings, This didn't just happen. You made deliberate choices to deceive both of us. Daniel tried several different explanations and apologies, but nothing he said could justify the systematic deception he had been conducting for over a year. What were you planning to do about the weddings? I asked. I was going to choose one of you before the actual weddings happened. And what about the other person? Were you just going to disappear? I was going to explain that I wasn't ready for marriage. After leading us through months of wedding planning, I know it sounds bad. It doesn't just sound bad, Amanda said. It is bad. You've wasted years of our lives and destroyed our ability to trust anyone. The confrontation lasted for 2 hours, but ultimately there was nothing Daniel could say to repair the damage he had caused. Both Amanda and I ended our engagements immediately and began the process of canceling our respective weddings. I'm so sorry this happened to you too, Amanda told me as we parted ways. I hope you find someone who deserves your love. You too, I replied. We both deserve so much better than this. The aftermath of discovering Daniel's double life was emotionally devastating, but also oddly liberating. I had to cancel a wedding 6 weeks before it was supposed to happen, which was embarrassing and expensive, but it was better than marrying someone who was capable of such systematic deception. My family and friends were shocked by the revelation, but supportive of my decision to end the engagement. I can't believe he was planning 2 weddings, my sister said. What kind of person does something like that? Someone who's completely selfish and delusional, I replied. The experience taught me valuable lessons about red flags in relationships and the importance of trusting my instincts when something feels wrong. Daniel's reluctance to have me visit during business trips, his vague stories about work, and his pattern of being unavailable during travel had all been warning signs that I had dismissed or rationalized. In the future, I'll pay more attention to inconsistencies in stories and behavior. I told my therapist during one of our sessions, and I'll be more suspicious of partners who seem to compartmentalize their lives or who are reluctant to share details about their activities. 6 months after ending my engagement, I started dating again, but I was much more cautious about trusting people and much more assertive about verifying the things partners told me about their lives. Trust but verify became my new relationship motto. I met my current boyfriend through mutual friends, and I was upfront about my experience with Daniel and my need to build trust gradually. I appreciate you telling me about your ex, he said. It helps me understand why you might need extra reassurance about honesty and consistency. A year later, I found out through mutual acquaintances that Daniel had moved to a different state and was apparently dating someone new. I hope he's learned from his mistakes. I told Amanda when she shared this information with me. I hope so too, but I also hope his new girlfriend is more skeptical than we were. Amanda and I stayed in touch and became friends, bonded by our shared experience of surviving Daniel's deception. We're both stronger and wiser because of what happened, she said during one of our phone calls. Daniel thought he could manipulate us, but ultimately, he just taught us how to recognize and avoid manipulative people. The most important lesson I learned from the experience is that real love doesn't require deception or compartmentalization. Someone who truly loves you won't need to maintain a secret life or hide significant aspects of their activities from you. Daniel's double life wasn't a sign of how much he loved both of us. It was a sign of how little he respected either of us. Real love is built on honesty, transparency, and the willingness to choose one person and commit to them completely. Daniel was too selfish and cowardly to make that choice, which is why he lost both of us and deserved to lose both of us. 2 years later, I'm in a healthy relationship with someone who doesn't travel for mysterious business meetings and who never makes me feel like I'm bothering him by wanting to spend time together. Your ex sounds like a sociopath, my current boyfriend said when I told him about Daniel's double engagement. I think he was just incredibly selfish and thought he could have everything he wanted without consequences. Well, he found out that actions have consequences. Daniel's story is a reminder that some people will go to extraordinary lengths to avoid making difficult choices or facing the reality of their commitments. But eventually the truth always comes to light, and the people who try to live double lives end up losing everything they were trying to keep.